that was just a teaser for what you can expect from this part 2 of my Drive the World movie. Hello one and all, welcome to Seen Through Glass. If you missed part 1, please go back and check it out to see the start of the epic 12-month adventure that my girlfriend Vicky and I set off on at the beginning of 2019. In this episode, I want to focus on the flyaway leg of the journey. Because we were trying to do the whole trip within 12 months and the fact we had some budget restrictions, we couldn't literally circumnavigate the globe in my 911 Carrera T. So instead, I had to pick the places that I thought content opportunities would be the best and car culture would be the most prevalent. And if we couldn't drive there because of time or money, we would fly in and out and borrow cars locally. So yes, that's what this episode is going to focus on. And I think it's going to give you an idea as to just how intense this trip could be at times. So sit back, try to relax, and I hope you enjoy the flyaway leg of Drive the World. Now, I've actually visited Singapore quite a few times before. Long-term viewers of this channel will know that I often visit Indonesia with my family, and Singapore is where we choose to kind of stop over to break up the flight. So I was super excited to get there as part of Drive the World, because in my mind, it's one of the most visually spectacular cities you can visit. And a visually spectacular city excites me, because that means epic B-roll. And by B-roll, I mean scenic shots. I also know that the kind of supercar, exotic car culture in Singapore is insane. One of the first things I did was get up close and personal with an extremely rare and very desirable BMW.
I don't think even this aircon's gonna save me. Ah! Singapore is so humid. Join me in what I think could be one of the best BMWs ever made, the E92 M3 GTS. I think they were going to make around 200 when they first announced production of this car. They actually only ended up making 137. So it's ended up being a super, super rare car.
Somewhere up here, there is a guy. Oh look! Oh my God, it's a Reventon. That was a Reventon. Oh my Lord, I've heard about this guy. He's got an this is it, look. He's got F40, Testarossa, Enzo, F50, and there was a bloody Reventon. That is mental. I've heard about this guy. Oh my God, I feel like I need to go back and get more pictures. Ah, that was mad! So I hadn't even spent half a day in Singapore, and I'd already driven one of the best BMWs ever made, and driven past a house which had about £5 million worth of super hypercars on the driveway. To tap into the scene a little bit more, that evening we went to meet up with a couple of local car spotters who were going to show us around and explain a bit more about Singapore's supercar culture.
This is essentially what we call the Southeast Asian Monaco.
Southeast Asian Monaco.
Across the Southeast Asian nation, you won't see that many supercars in one country.
But that's the thing is, like, I've seen them just everywhere, like a regular occurrence. It doesn't matter what part of town we've been in, there have been supercars.
It's to the point where they spot you, you don't spot them anymore.
Okay, nice. So you can just stand there and just chill and you'll see something. What's the most common supercar?
I think Porsche.
Her favorite car there, Porsche and the
Maserati. Okay.
Common. Maserati has become like the car where, you know, people who just became successful in life after upgrading from an M go into a Maserati.
If you didn't pick up on that, Vicky's favorite car is a Maserati.
Maserati GT.
Gran Turismo.
Gran Turismo GT.
Yeah, GT. That's what Maserati fans call it. GT. Why?
Because it sounds awesome.
Fair.
It looks good.
Fair.
Looks a bit like a Jaguar. Sounds better than a Jaguar. And it's achievable. It's achievable.
Okay. So one thing I've noticed here, which has been blowing my mind and we've just been talking about off camera, is the fact that Starbucks... Yes. Oh! Spot, top spot, hold on. Hold on, Gallardo. I think it's Gallardo with a crazy wrap and a wing. Yeah, Singaporeans love a Lambo. That is a fact. You guys love a Lambo. But also, you seem to love a late night coffee.
Yeah, we do.
Because I've really noticed that like Starbucks seem to be open here late. Now, a lot of my viewers would think I'd be very excited about that, but I actually don't really drink coffee post like 5, 6 p.m. That gets a bit silly at that point. Whilst in Singapore, Porsche had actually lent us a 911 Carrera T. I think so that I didn't miss mine whilst it headed back to Europe. They'd actually wrapped theirs in the pink pig livery, the iconic Le Mans pink pig livery, and that was to celebrate the Chinese New Year, which was going to be the year of the pig, and it was being celebrated whilst we were in town. They also linked us up with Claire Jedrick, who's a sort of motorsport presenter, racing driver extraordinaire. She gave us a bit of a sort of tour of the kind of sightseeing spots of Singapore. I absolutely loved it. We even went to the top of the iconic Marina Bay Sands Hotel. Now, I suffer from vertigo, so as amazing as this is, I'm feeling a little bit sick, but I'm gonna try and stay with it and do a piece to camera before I throw up over the edge of the Marina Bay Sands Hotel. But wow. As epic as the sightseeing was, though, it was at this point, or actually a little bit after that things took a little bit of a turn for the worse. Do you remember the stop in Singapore on the way to Australia?
Yeah, we were staying in this small hotel as an overnight stop before our next flight. We had about 5 hours of sleep, and as soon as the alarm went off, you just woke up screaming.
Like, ah!
So he just started shouting, like, it was like the end of the world kind of scream, where he was shaking in the bed and just wouldn't, and I was like, what the hell?
It turned out to be
was very
stress.
weird.
It was stress fundamentally, and weirdly, when we went back to Singapore for the actual Singaporean leg of the trip, I had another slight turn in mental health. I think probably by that point we weren't looking after ourselves, and it finally caught up with me in Singapore. We kind of got through Australia and New Zealand by just keep going. And the way it kind of got triggered is we were getting back into that 911 Carrera T that Porsche had lent us, and for some reason I went to close the door like with this hand, even though I closed the door like that, and the window obviously went up.
Your fingers just ended up getting trapped, and then you started shouting, and again I was like, what do I do? My finger!
I thought I was going to lose my fingers and my hand, but that then triggered a bit of an emotional outlet. Oh, an outcry. I just cried for about half an hour.
He was crying. You were just daunted by the fact that we were already exhausted 2 months in, and we had 8 more months of the same, if not more.
We were only going to be in Kuala Lumpur for about 48 hours. It was more of a kind of stopover on the way to Hong Kong, but I was there because I've been invited to the country's inaugural Cars and Coffee, or Cars and Copy event. But to kind of cram in as much as possible, the day before, a group of local car photographers arranged a bit of a Lamborghini cruise to go and see some of the more sort of picturesque parts of the city. Right, you now join me inside Malik's Audi TT. This is a proper throwback to the stars seen through glass now. But we have come to Putrajaya. Is that pronunciation spot on? That's Putrajaya, which is supposedly one of the more picturesque areas, or is it a town itself, or is it an area of Kuala Lumpur?
It's a town itself.
It's a town in itself, okay. And it's a sort of government town. Government town, and so I can already see it's got some insanely stunning buildings. But very worryingly, Alex just said that traditionally it's hotter here than in KL. And considering that KL is an oven, or similar to hell, I'm slightly nervous as to what we're going to experience here. So the windows are currently up, but to try and get some shots of these cool cars we're surrounded by, I think they're going to have to come down. Wow, that building at the end is stunning. Right, big camera's coming out. Let's B-roll this place. Change of scene, as you might have guessed. Whew. The TT has been upgraded for another VW Group product, but you now join me in a Lamborghini Aventador. Good sir, thank you very much for this, much appreciated. Before we get going, just remind me, how many miles or kilometers have you done in this car?
4,000. 4,870.
4,800, and you've had this since
2016.
I mean, drive it some more. Now, as much as I'd like to make this channel about coffee and travel, I'm going to keep it predominantly about cars. So, I've come down this morning to Cars and Copy. Not Cars and Coffee, because I believe here in Malaysia, coffee is kopi, that's how you say coffee in Malaysian. And it's very different to the Cars and Coffee we get in Europe. Instead of a supercar breakfast meet, this is very much a sort of local modified car meet. There's drifting, there's gymkhana, there's a rev battle, we've got modified Mustangs, Evos, GTRs, the lot. You were just saying this was your late father's car?
Yeah, it was me and my late father's project car.
It's so cool.
Yeah.
And you drive it around just for events like this?
I actually use this for my detailing. Me and my friend, we run a mobile detailing business.
Oh, nice. And this is your workhorse?
Yeah, it's basically our work car. So Mojo Detailers.
Mojo Detailers, Kuala Lumpur, right?
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. Well, look, you got an amazing work car, so I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I'm so glad we went to that event because I discovered, like in Singapore, prices of supercars in Malaysia are extortionate. Actually, that afternoon, after Cars and Copy, we went to Bespoke, a local dealership, and they had everything from a Challenge Stradale to a 997 GT2 RS and even a Gambala Mirage GT. And once converted into pounds, the prices of the cars there were like 3 or 4 times that of the European equivalent. So it made it clear that supercars in Malaysia are for the very few. I mean, I think in the world they're for the few, but in Malaysia it seemed like they were for the very few. And so Cars and Copy provided me like a great opportunity to kind of see what like just ordinary petrol heads did and what cars they owned. And I loved that Mini, but there was also an amazing modified Golf R and a load of other crazy creations. And everyone was just so nice and passionate, and it made the stop in Kuala Lumpur really worthwhile. Thank you very much.
Any sugar?
No sugar, thank you. Trying to.
No, okay.
So you can see he's got his coffee, ladies and
You
gentlemen.
get the touchy feeling. Why did I not get a little shorter run?
I'm a local.
Damn it! I got to get the Hong Kong.
That's
hat.
it. It's all about this.
Phil is legit a celebrity here. I don't want him to hear me say that. People are obsessed with him. I'm officially going to declare it. We are 3 hours into my trip into Hong Kong. I love it here!
It's halfway decent.
Oh my gosh, it's so good because you know why? Like, there's a proper scene. We were sat like this kind of cool cafe that was kind of gritty, but also actually have really good food and coffee. And there's like a Zonda driving past. He just totally one-upped you this morning, depending on which kind of. Sorry.
It's time for you to leave Hong Kong.
I'm in a 430 Scud. Oh, I mean, and then look, I mean, we're in this. I mean, come on.
And now we've got a big bus blocking our way out.
But that's what I kind of love. There's like, you know, we've literally got Zondas, DB4 GTs, and God knows what else.
And
then,
this guy.
And then this baller.
It's just
Okay, so this is the kind of Asian culture that I'm like obsessed with. Like, if I could be reborn, I'd be reborn as like a really trendy Cantonese Harley Davidson guy. Joe, I would. Like, that would be me. I would be so me. I'd be called Stan Lane or something. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I'd be a baller.
You would have really nice wispy facial hair as well.
Wispy facial hair, but then I'd also have like bleached blonde hair because I'd still have hair. Oh, it would be amazing.
You're gonna do so well in Tokyo.
So some of you might not know that Phil's actually involved with the Peninsula Hotel Group, and during our time in Hong Kong, he offered to put us up in their kind of flagship hotel.
We were really excited.
It was the first luxury that we'd had for the entire trip, and we definitely couldn't have afforded to stay in the Peninsula off our own budget, so to have someone offer to put us up was like winning. Phil had gone all out. We arrived into what could only be described as a mansion. I mean, it didn't feel like a hotel room, right? It was like an apartment.
It was like a penthouse apartment, yeah.
And walking in the room, the first thing that we saw, do you remember the stack of chocolates?
Yeah, it was like a 3-tier chocolate stack. And of course, Sam, who was supposed to be cutting out chocolate and cutting out any alcohol during the trip, ate all the chocolate.
Popped open
Had
the
the whole champagne, considering we landed at what was probably 1 a.m. And you were exhausted. But you just decided to destroy everything that Phil had laid out for us.
It was, though, the perfect base to then go out and explore Hong Kong. You join me on board the iconic Star Ferry crossing from Kowloon to Hong Kong Island, or the central area. Today I'm indulging in a bit of travel vlogging. I'm just going to be exploring, taking in the sights, the sounds, seeing what this place has to offer, because the few days that I've been here, I've kind of fallen in love. It just has such an air and atmosphere to it, and intrigue. There's just little things going on in all different parts of town. So yeah, as long as we survive this rather rough sea crossing, those of you that know I don't like the sea, you'll know what pain I'm going through. We're going to get to Hong Kong Island and get exploring. Well, welcome to the world's longest outdoor covered escalator system. This is the central to mid-levels escalator, and it literally goes for miles, from up on a hill down into where the workers work, I suppose, and it switches directions depending on the time of the day, depending on which way people are going. And yeah, it's you don't get a lot of space. I've managed to get myself a little bit of space so I can vlog, but it's pretty tight, pretty busy, and a little bit humid. I can't get a grip of the weather here in Hong Kong. Sometimes it's cloudy, sometimes it's sunny, sometimes it's cold, sometimes it's hot. But yeah, whilst this is covered, I suppose, which is nice from the rain and some of the sun, it does make it a bit sticky, but hey, at least we haven't got to walk. Let's ride the escalator. So after getting distracted sightseeing around the city, and I warn you, there's a lot of sightseeing in this part of Drive the World, I decided it was time to get back to cars. And I'd been connected over Instagram with a couple of local collectors. When I say collectors, that's a bit of an understatement, because one of them, who goes by Always Wong Official, had a list of cars that I just couldn't quite believe. And he literally said, well, pick whichever one you want to film with. Naturally, I picked the Zonda. Oh my God, that morning was just, I mean, I feel like I can still smell that car somehow. It was just perfect. I've never actually been in a Zonda before. That was my first time, and whilst okay, fine, I didn't drive it, it didn't really matter, because hearing the story about how it was created and kind of like the romance around the car just made it all that more special. And then even from the passenger seat, it lived up to every expectation I had for it. The mist, the road, it's just perfect. The noise of a Zonda, I'm not sure much beats it. After that, I then went to meet up with another collector called Richard XRX. He had an amazing collection of cars himself, but the thing that really blew me away is where he kept them. I'm not talking about the architecture or the design of the car park, I'm talking about the other cars that were in it, because this was no ordinary car park. I mean, he himself had an SLS Black Series, a Challenge Stradale, and a Scud, and many other cars, but around him were Pagani Huayras, F50s, F40s, Koenigsegg's. I mean, I can't even think what else. There was just amazing metal everywhere. In fact, I think the worst car in the entire car park was like a Bentley Continental. It was absolutely mind-boggling. I think we can be honest, we didn't like China, did we?
No.
No. It was a bit of a blip because we had made plans to basically do a bit of a road trip, a short road trip. We were only going to be there for a few days, but to kind of pick up a car in Shanghai and head south to kind of scenic area. But literally about 10 days before we turned up, the car, well, they basically took the car back and said, sorry, it's not available anymore. So suddenly we had no plans. And if you don't know, social media in China, that's not really a thing. So I really struggled to kind of connect with some other people and find some other stuff to film. So we got kind of left with 2 days of not much to do in Shanghai, and it was just not that nice.
We had a really foggy day one. Day two, it was amazing and sunny, so we went to the old town. I think that's what it was called. I mean, the sort of, imperial old part, which was genuinely stunning to explore. We like the history of China.
We like the history, that's a good point.
But not current
China.
China.
Yeah. Current China, sorry.
It's a bit too communist for us.
This is the Huangpujiang River. Listen to me and my pronunciation. And as you can see, we have the insane Shanghai city backdrop behind us, and all along this river, people are queuing up to take their photos. The Instagram game here is strong. And if I just flip myself out of this shot, that building right there, the second tallest building in the world. Only the Burj Khalifa is taller. I don't really know how to explain where we are, but things got real hectic real quick. This is near the Yu Garden and Shanghai Old Street. It seems to be some kind of like marketplace. There's food, there's shopping. You're getting shoved around left, right and centre. It's super intense but awesome, and I'm just really tempted to dive into one of those like dumpling bars or something because the food all looks insane. Also, one thing I've noticed, because they don't really have YouTube here, people find YouTubers fascinating. Everywhere I go, people are very confused by the art of vlogging. I get a lot of weird looks, people waving, people jumping. I think they're on the BBC maybe. So yeah, all a bit quirky, but I was going with the flow here. You join us a few hours later, many hours of shopping complete, and we have just purchased one of these. We have no idea what it is, but everyone seems to be eating them, and every single food store seems to have been selling them. We thought it was like fruit covered in like a honey type thing, but it's not a strawberry. Any feedback? So yeah, China was a bit of a blip, but thank God Japan was about to make up for it. I've wanted to visit Japan basically my entire life. I actually think Drive the World was just an excuse for me to get to Japan. I don't know what it is. Of course, yes, the car culture, but also the people and the history, the scenery, just everything about it. I've just been obsessed with the idea of Japan for so long. And the very first morning, a local photographer called Ken sent me a message saying, look, I've arranged quite a cool day. And in my mind, quite a cool day would have been like driving around Tokyo in an old beaten up Miata. But no, instead, what he had arranged was absolutely ridiculous. So yes, I guess this is Japan. What have I stumbled into this morning? I mean, I can't start here. Where do I go for the rest of the week? Boys and girls, I'm in an end zone. God, it's special in here.
I'm sorry, no speaking English.
It's okay. I am very happy. That's as much as we need to say.
Yeah.
Now, something you should know if you're going to visit Japan for the first time is that people there don't tend to speak much English. However, it never seems to be a problem. You know, some countries you go to, people don't speak English, it kind of breaks down the conversation. People kind of panic and they pause and that's kind of it. In Japan, they just keep talking to you in Japanese and assume you'll figure it out. And this was a perfect example of that because Mr. Mura, and yes, I realise the irony of the fact that we were driving an Enzo and he goes by Mr. Mura, more on that in the main video if you want to go back and watch it. But yeah, he didn't really speak any English, but he would just talk at me or to me and I would do the same, and somehow we found a way to communicate. I mean, I know there's a bit of a language barrier, right?
Yeah.
But he just said after lunch, you drive.
No ways.
I like, we need to get can you come and translate? Because he was literally like, yeah, after lunch, you drive.
So, on here,
Yes. 1, 2, 3.
start.
Yes.
Okay.
Side brake.
Handbrake is here,
Yes,
up
yes.
and then,
Okay. Side
No, no.
brake.
okay, up and
Okay.
off. Okay.
Yes.
Guys, I'm going point of view. I don't know how else to do this, but also I don't want you to see me cry, which might happen. Winker. Okay, that's the indicator. And yeah, okay, so this goes on here. Okay, no problem. Wow. Oh, this is brilliant. Arigato.
No problem.
I'm still pinching myself just to make sure that moment was real. I drove an Enzo, like that's my poster hypercar. Like when I was growing up, I mean, Michael Schumacher was involved in the development of that thing. Oh, honestly, what an amazing moment. And then we can't understate, or I can't understate, how amazing Mr. Mura was. He was this kind of like dream Japanese grandfather figure that I'd always hoped to meet. Having said that, he was also a very careful driver owner. The amazing cars that he had in his garage, I think he treats them all very, very respectfully. And I was trying to be respectful because I know that's a big thing in Japan. So I wasn't really pushing the car hard, but I don't care. Like I would have happily just driven the Enzo around a car park. I drove it. Who really cares? But yeah, every time I kind of approached like 5,000 RPM, he started to get very, very tense. Also, let's face it, is Winker not the best name for an indicator you've ever heard in your life? Winker, winker. I mean, that's what I call indicators now, winkers. We love Tokyo. We actually didn't plan to say that at the time. It kind of creeped me out that you were speaking at the same time as me. We love Tokyo. I mean, it was just such a quirky city, right?
Yeah, oh sorry, I just daydreamed a little bit there.
Tokyo.
No, it was amazing. I mean, it felt like nowhere else we'd been. Similar to New Zealand, it just felt like somewhere completely different. And yeah, we had an amazing time.
Exploring even just the shops. I mean, you know, some of the shops just sell the weirdest stuff that you would never expect to find anywhere else. But also the food we fell in love with. I know it's quite a simple thing to eat in Japan considering what amazing food is on offer. But the curries, like I know that sounds really basic, but we just found ourselves eating like katsu curries like everywhere.
But we weren't very experimental.
Do you want to tell the people why?
Why?
You don't eat sushi.
No, I don't eat sushi, but that doesn't mean there's only sushi.
No, but that's what I wanted to, like...
Okay, but you could have eaten it.
Well, no, because I couldn't go to a sushi restaurant because you were like, nah.
I don't know how to explain where we are. This is Kiddie Land, and I'm playing toy cats. This place is ridiculous. Essentially, Japanese people seem to be big kids. I'm big kids, so I'm very happy to be here. Star Wars lightsaber chopsticks. Oh, my life is made. Paul's been saying that I haven't been filming enough Lambo content during Drive the World. Well, there you go, mate. Your favourite car. Benino. This is so
nuts. There is so much. What is it, Centenario as well? This store is just insane. What else can we see? Come on, guys. Oh, Seb Delaney's here. Whilst Tokyo was amazing, I wanted to get out there and explore more of Japan. And of course, I had this kind of dream or this vision of doing so in a GTR or an NSX or even kind of a vintage JDM car. But instead, it was actually only Ferrari that replied to any of my emails. So I ended up getting my hands on a Portofino for a couple of days to get out of Tokyo and explore the countryside. Okay, fine. Not ideal, not necessarily what I'd hoped for, but who cares? It's a Ferrari. Really shouldn't have parked so close to these railings. Oh. Do whatever you can to protect Rosso Corsa paint. One thing true Ferrari people know. The plan is to head down to the Hakone region, which is near Mount Fuji. It's about 2 hours outside of Tokyo and apparently has some of the best driving roads close to the Tokyo area. So yeah, that's what we're gonna do. Let's flick into sport. Let's crack a window. Let's start up the Portofino for the first time.
Hakone was definitely one of the places that we really liked throughout the whole trip. It was the sort of kind of mystical, amazing, outdoorsy place, and I found this amazing hotel just outside the town, I think, which had these sort of what were they called?
Hot tubs?
Yeah, no, they weren't called the Japanese baths, Japanese deep style baths.
Yeah, it wasn't a hot tub.
What
It was
they?
basically a bucket. But also the robes. You remember the robes?
Oh yeah, so they had the traditional. Again, what were they called?
Should have done our research before recording this segment, shouldn't we?
So much so for traveling the world. Anyway, they were traditional Japanese robes. Sam wore them. He wore them.
You had to wear them when arriving. Everyone else was wearing them,
unisex.
and they were on the bed as you walked into the room. And it was encouraged to wear. I'm going to say donburi, but I'm pretty sure that's a dish from Wagamama. No.
Kimonos?
No. Anyway, they were super stylish and cool, so I immediately put mine on. And you were supposed to wear them in and around the hotel. Just someone obviously wasn't that keen. But no matter how awesome the hotel was, we'd come to one of the best driving areas in Japan with a Ferrari. So we woke up in the morning, loaded up the car and headed straight out on some of the roads. But oh my God, was it wet? Like literally the heavens had opened. We got absolutely soaked throughout that entire day, but it was still so epic to get up onto those roads with such a wicked car. Now these are totally normal boiled eggs. However, as you can see on the outside, they go black because they're boiled slightly differently. They're boiled in hot spring water, this being a volcanic area, lots of hot springs everywhere. The water's got a little sulfur and iron, so that turns the shell black. And apparently, these add 7 years to your life, so fingers crossed. Gonna give them a go. You're gonna have one as well? Yeah. So there you have it, totally normal egg underneath.
So if you have another one,
do I add 14 years? Yeah, I don't know, that's where the myth starts to get a bit shaky, I reckon.
how's that?
Tastes like a totally normal boiler.
Yeah, but it's not meant to taste any different.
Wow, look at this. I'll see you in 7 years longer than I was going to 2 minutes ago. So this is the shrine we wanted to go and take a picture by, because I'll put some pictures right now of how Instagrammable it is. And it's under scaffolding and roped off, so today continues to be a bit of a fail. Look at this water! Ah! It was a shame about the rain in Hakone, but we actually still had an amazing time. But returning to Tokyo, I felt like I still had the sort of desire to scratch the itch of filming kind of the underground JDM scene that I'd seen so much of in Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift and maybe some other more credible bits of content. But anyway, on one evening I got a message from Ken, the same photographer who arranged the amazing Enzo Day with Mr. Mura, saying, look, I've heard of a kind of low-key car meet that should be happening this evening. I don't really know what's going to be there, but we can go along. And I was like, yep. Count me in. So I cameraed up, and once the sun had gone down, we headed out onto the roads around Tokyo to see what was going on and whether I could find any sort of signs of this crazy underworld car culture that I'd so dreamed of one day filming.
I'm sipping 15, kept a weapon on me. Flow make digits, I'm on my business, stack chicken like what it's gon' be. Crew in the cut,
So I've just found out that is a Camcraft exhaust. It's one of the loudest exhausts and F12s I've ever heard in my entire life. It's almost deafening. I kind of hope he's going to give it someone the pull-on star highway, but yes, mad looking thing, but the sound is...
What does that mean? No. Oh wow. I couldn't believe it. They closed down the meet just as things were kind of bubbling up, and I was like, I'm about to film DK's son come round the corner sideways. They were like, everyone go home. Apparently those things don't really kick off until like 1 or 2 in the morning anyway, and I had an early flight the next morning, so I never would have lasted that long. But yeah, it was great to kind of get out there and see a little bit of what happens in the kind of street culture, but it was definitely a tame evening. Huge thanks to Ken anyway for trying to arrange it all, and it just means I have to get back. That's all it is. It means that I got to go back to Japan, and in general, I have to go back to Japan. That place is just amazing. And if in part 1 we spoke about how much we fell in love with New Zealand, part 2's big kind of overall theme is Japan. Japan numero uno. But it was the last place we stopped off in our kind of East Asian part of the trip. We were now going to be slowly heading west. We had 2 more stops before we got back to Europe, and the first of which being India.
I got problems on problems on problems on problems on problems on problems I solve them. I run through the money, the pressure be calling. Left on my blessings, I feel like I'm falling. The birdie is back, tell me I'm garbage. I'm going through something, that's why I ain't calling. Phone and progression, it's all that I wanted. The phone and affection, I summon and dub it. Cause I got problems on problems on problems on problems on problems on problems I solve them. I run through the money, the pressure be calling. Left on my blessings, I feel like I'm falling. The birdie is back, tell me I'm garbage. I'm going through something, that's why I ain't calling.
Your eyes don't deceive you, that was a Lamborghini driving around the streets of Delhi. I didn't expect to be filming that in India either. And well, actually, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I didn't expect to be filming much car content in India because it was the one and only place for the entirety of Drive the World that I didn't line up any car content before we arrived. And there were sort of multiple reasons for that, but the main reason being that I just wanted to explore the place. It's not somewhere that maybe I immediately think of cars, but it is somewhere that I immediately think of, amazing culture and people and heritage and just, life. And so I thought, if I stumble across cars along the way, great, but really I'm going to indulge in a bit of travel vlogging because I think a lot of you know that's a big love of mine, is a bit of travel vlogging, and neither Vicky or I had ever been to India, and my parents were actually going to be there at the same time for a couple of days, so we overlapped with them, and yeah, I just went all in on the slow-mo travel vlog. That was like, I think, probably one of the most memorable travel experiences that I have from Drive the World in general. Because, of course, everyone's heard of the Taj Mahal, and I've seen millions of pictures of it, but seeing it in real life, it just... I actually felt like it took my breath away.
Blew your socks off.
Blew my socks off, yeah. It's not an expression I use often, but that's what it did. I mean, I think we both enjoyed it, and even though there were like thousands of people there, it almost felt like we had quite a private experience. I don't know why. No?
Well,
not really? You don't
there
feel
were
that way?
a lot of people there, but clearly Sam had some sort of romantic experience.
Clearly, by myself.
Now be honest, this is the kind of stuff I was expecting from the Indian car scene. As amazing as it was, check out that Lambo and the Bentley the other day, this is the kind of stuff I wanted to find, because India has always had quite an iconic link with the vintage classic car. Royal families from India have always sort of collected these things, so I'm super glad that now I'm here in Jaipur, I've come to check out this mini collection. We've got a range of kind of German and American vintage cars here, some of the best, some really quirky stuff. Let's check it out.
This is the condition. See, this is the condition.
So where did you find this car?
In Maharaja of Ayodhya. This was the condition of the engine.
Oh my God.
See?
But there are cars like this all over India, just like lying around covered in dust and stuff?
Yeah, there's so many parts missing. See the condition of the car. Then we gradually...
How many years did it take you?
Stripped it down.
Put it all back together?
It took, for this car, it took me almost 2 years, see?
2 years, wow.
Then we stripped it down completely to the... See?
Wow, okay, to the bare bones. Unbelievable. I loved hearing about the stories of those restoration projects that had been kind of tucked away around the back of the Gem Palace in Jaipur. That was the kind of stuff that I was hoping to stumble across whilst in India. And actually, just down the street, I came across another restoration specialist, but these guys specialised in Willys Jeeps and modifying the gypsies that I'd fallen in love with, which are basically Suzuki Jimneys. So yeah, Jaipur actually ended up being, in terms of car content, ace. But our hotel also ended up actually being pretty amazing. It was called 28 Koti, and it was like this little tiny boutique guest house kind of tucked away on the back streets of Jaipur. And I mean, it was a weird night, but it was kind of fun.
It was a weird night because I think a bomb exploded in the middle of the night.
Well, it was very loud.
There was a lot of noise. There was a lot of noise, but you kind of learned to sleep with the noise.
The room that we were staying in just seemed to be like on the main street. You kind of get used to it, but then it all went silent around 2 a.m. and then suddenly at like 6, there was like, it just went like, I don't know what it was,
and then everything
erupted.
started.
It was really bizarre.
The day had started in Jaipur. Yeah, it was incredible. Yeah, definitely 28 Koti.
Big recommendation. And actually, the night before, they put on like a super nice evening dinner for us, like a little romantic, cute dinner in the garden with candles and marigold flowers. And the thing was, I was a little bit nervous still of eating because I, of course, had got Delhi belly in Delhi. Yeah, classic me. So as amazing as the thing was, I was a bit annoyed that it was so dark and outside because I couldn't see what I was eating. I was such a British tourist being like, excuse me, what is this? I think by that point of the trip in India, I'd filled my boots with all the kind of travel vlogging and I was ready to go back to cars, I think. Like, it was amazing, but I was like...
There was not a lot of driving involved.
Well, there was no driving. I sat in the passenger seat for the whole week.
Yeah, and I think that frustrated Sam, and whereas for me, it was, a nice spiritual experience, but...
Yeah, I was just like, get me some V10 power.
Drive the World was not about that.
Yeah. So it's time to head to the airport and move on to our kind of final stop before returning to Europe, which was going to be Cape Town, South Africa. I feel like last time I was in Cape Town, I started my first video of the trip in a very similar way, in an Aston Martin dealership collecting a car. Well, it was such a good experience that 12 months later I'm back doing the very same thing. I don't know what it is about me, Cape Town and Aston Martin, but every time I go there, I end up in a DB11. I mean, I'm not complaining, I love DB11s, and actually, I love Cape Town, so I was super excited to get back. The first few days, I kind of bounced in between different car dealerships. Firstly, Crossley and Webb, who I'd visited the year before and made a big video on, and then a new place called The Archive, and the guys there were super, super nice, and actually arranged a few bits for me to film that week, including an amazing Porsche collector called Michelle. This woman, unbelievable. I mean, the range of Porsches she had was pretty mind-boggling, but the place she houses them, her home, was way more impressive. Actually, one of my biggest regrets of the entire year was not asking for permission to kind of photograph and film her house, because it was like something out of Architectural Digest. She'd taken this kind of old factory in a slightly undesirable part, I think it was an old factory, but anyway, undesirable part of Cape Town, and turned it into the ultimate bachelor, bachelorette, family, Porsche cave. I don't know how to describe it, but it had everything you could possibly want and imagine. And then, as I say, at the bottom, this collection of cars that were pretty drool-worthy. I think it's fair to say by this point of the trip, we were pretty unhealthy. It'd been about 3 months of just solidly traveling on the road, either in the car or on the plane, and editing and eating food fast. And yeah, we weren't feeling very good, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, we were just the amount of time spent sitting whilst moving. We started feeling it at that point a lot, and we just worried.
We worried, and so it was your idea, I think, to hike up one of the...
It was actually Miss Emma Walsh's idea.
To be fair, a bit of a plug there for Miss Emma Walsh.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen so many of her amazing photos when she goes back to Cape Town and does all these amazing hikes. I started looking into Lion's Head, the Lion's Head hike that she does every time she goes there, and all the blogs and advice, they all say it's a pretty intense hike. We're like, oh well, whatever, you know, if Emma can do it, we can do it.
That's the target. That's where we're going. Oh, I give so much money to be down on that beach right now. Woo. It's pretty steep, this. Water's already gone. So that's the advice from the travel board in the bin. Oh, look at those boulders. Look at those boulders, just perching on the side. So if you saw my first video from Cape Town collecting the DB11, that road down there, I don't know if you can see it, is the road I was driving on with the drone. Whew. The sunny side has been brutal. You might not be able to see it, but all the way down there is the DB11. Good thing that you can check on the car as you do the hike. The view from the top during sunset was 100% worth it. Like, that stands out in my memory from the whole trip, was that hike up Lion's Head. Like, as unadventurous and unathletic as we are, it was...
Yeah, it probably didn't backtrack all the crap food and sitting that we've done, but yeah.
Still, it was a good experience.
It made a bit of a difference.
I have dreamed of this moment for such a long time. Welcome to the Jaguar F-Type Project 7.
I used to own an F-Type R, and really ever since I bought that car, I've banged on about the fact that the Project 7 is one of my ultimate all-time dream machines. And so to finally get behind the wheel of it on a beautiful day, on a beautiful road, was just perfect, and it lived up to every expectation. The final thing we did, though, was a little bit more epic, because I finally got to meet Mr. Frisco 911. Now, if you don't know this story, the look of, the design of my 911 Carrera T is a kind of homage to the Frisco 911T, a 1970s 911, which I found on Instagram. And the reason I kind of loved it so much and kind of wanted to copy it was that it was also doing its own sort of round-the-world adventure. Now, the owner is actually a guy called Andre who lives in South Africa, but I came across his car whilst it was in Australia, in Melbourne at Dutton's Garage, and we took it out, got the cars together, did some photos, I walked around it, and it was just amazing, because that was kind of my hope when I went, okay, you know what, I'm going to pay homage to this 1970s car and kind of copy the look, but in my own way. Hopefully at some point we'll get the two cars together. And then that happened in Melbourne. And then when we got to South Africa, of course, I said to Andre, there is no way that we're not meeting up and hanging out. And he turned out to be the nicest guy and the most interesting and fascinating guy. And actually the story of his car is just mind-boggling. So yeah, please go back and check that out. Have a listen, because yeah, his story, the car story, and then the two of us together, I thought was such a special moment, and it was the perfect way to kind of finish off those first 3 months, the first quarter of Drive the World. Some 8 countries, 26 or so different hotel rooms, 50 odd videos, 10,000 kilometers on the road. And yeah, we were finally heading back to Europe. It was quite hard to believe, because it felt like so much but so little, and the road ahead was definitely a huge one. But this draws an end to part 2 of Drive the World, the movie. Part 3 is going to focus on Europe, which was another 3.5 months. A huge stint as Drive the World, and you can only imagine the things we got up to. So I hope you've enjoyed today's video. Give it a thumbs up if you have, and make sure you stay subscribed for plenty more videos to come.